There we go. Okay. Ricky jumped on his bike. As he sped past the girls, he called out, "You'll be sorry! You'll pay for this!" The girls just giggled until they ran out of breath and their stomach hurts. Finally, they got serious again and went back to the question of what to be for Halloween. "We could be the princesses of England," suggested Linda. "There are only 2 of them, Elizabeth and Margaret Rose. One of us would have to be their mother," said Molly. "How about being nurses?" asked Susan. "We could all wear capes." "That's what we did last year," Linda and Molly said together. They considered being acrobats, 3 Alices in Wonderland, ice skating stars like Sonja Henning, or the 3 blind mice. No one could get very excited about being a blind mouse. And anyway, Mrs. McIntyre overheard them and said she absolutely did not have time to make a mouse costume for Molly. "And besides," added Mrs. McIntyre, "in wartime I don't think it's right to use good material for Halloween costumes." Molly and Linda and Susan groaned. They knew Mrs. McIntyre was right. "But I've got another idea, girls," said Mrs. McIntyre. "I'll show you how to make grass skirts out of newspaper and crepe paper. Then you can be hula dancers." "Well," said Susan, "my sister Gloria taught me how to make flowers out of crepe paper, just like they did to decorate for the prom. We could string them together and make flower necklaces and headdresses." "I think my father has an old ukulele," said Linda. "It doesn't have any strings, but it will look good." "It's too bad it's so cold, because I know my mother will make me wear socks and shoes and a sweater on top." said Susan. "But at least the flower necklaces will hide most of the sweater." So the girls decided to be Hawaiian hula dancers for Halloween. Soon after that, the street lights went on, which meant Linda and Susan had to go home. They agreed to meet back at Molly's house after school the next afternoon to make their costume. Then they would all go trick-or-treating together. Afterwards, Linda and Susan would spend the night at Molly's, so they could talk about how wonderful their Halloween had been. By the time she went inside to supper, Molly had completely forgotten Ricky's threat to make them all sorry. She was too busy practicing her hula. Chapter 3. Trick or Treat. The grass skirt made out of newspaper and crepe paper was not exactly as glamorous as the pink floaty skirt Molly had imagined, but it was quite long, and it made a nice rustling noise as she walked. Besides, making the skirts had been a lot of fun. Mom came home from Red Cross headquarters early just so she could help. She put on a record of Hawaiian songs. Then they all sat in the den, cutting the newspaper into strips. They covered the newspaper in with strips of green crepe paper. Mom sewed the paper into long pieces of cloth and tie around their waists like aprons. Susan showed them how to make crepe paper flowers that were big and colorful. They made strings of the paper flowers to use as necklaces and bracelets. Mrs. McIntyre even squirted some of her perfume on them. By the time they were ready to go trick-or-treating, Molly, Linda, and Susan were caught up in the excitement of Halloween and very pleased with their matching hula outfits. "Adorable! You look as cute as buttons," said Dolores. She and Jill bobby-pinned the big flowers into the girls' hair. "When I get back from taking Brad trick-or-treating, I'll take your picture to send to Dad," said Mrs. McIntyre. Brad was wearing a sheet. He was going as a ghost. "Ricky, I'll want a picture of you, too." "Okay, Mom," said Ricky. He was dressed as a pirate. Ricky was a pirate every year. It was a windy night, but not too cold, so the girls rolled down their socks and pushed up the sleeves of their sweaters. The wind made their skirts ripple, so they looked graceful and pretty, just like real grass skirts. They saw Allison when they went to the Silvano's house down the street. Her angel outfit was perfect. She had a flowing white satin robe with fluffy white feathers at the neck and cuffs and all down the front. Her wings and halo were covered with gold glitter. "Hula dancers!" Allison sighed with envy when she saw them. Molly was very pleased. They had made Allison jealous. "Your outfit is good too," Molly said. "You really look like an angel." She felt like being nice. In fact, it probably would be fun to go trick-or-treating with Allison, except Allison's mother always went with her. "Hawaiian hula dancers," Mrs. Hargett was saying. "What charming costumes, gals! And homemade, too! Aren't you clever?" The girls just smiled and hurried away. "Really?" Linda said later. "You almost have to feel sorry for Allison with a mother like that." "I know," said Molly. "Wouldn't it be awful to have a mother who doesn't know the whole point of Halloween is to go out and walk around the neighborhood with your friends and not with her?" Because of the war, most people did not have any sugar to spare, so the girls didn't get as many candies or cookies as last year. Nevertheless, their brown paper bags were soon bulging with apples, donuts, molasses, kisses, peanuts, and popcorn balls. The Hargett's maid was giving out Tootsie Roll Pops, which were the best treats. Two families, the Pedersons and the Rutschins, asked the girls to do a trick before they got their treats. So the girls did a hula, waving their arms and singing the Hawaiian song they learned in school. Linda strummed her stringless ukulele. It was a big hit. The Pedersons especially clapped and clapped. They gave the girls each 2 glasses of apple cider. 2 glasses of cider. Linda believed in eating her treats along the way, so her bag was not as full as Susan and Molly's when the girls finally walked up the driveway to Molly's house. Molly was humming the Hawaiian song, Linda was unwrapping a popcorn ball, and Susan was making her skirt swish and sway. They were almost to the back door when a huge splash of water poured down on top of them and a hose sprayed straight at them. "Ah!" Molly yelled. The water flooded around her feet in cold gushes. She felt as if she were drowning in a waterfall. Her bag of treats burst, the popcorn balls floated in puddles, and the donuts turned to spongy globs, and the apples rolled away down the sidewalk. Linda and Susan were gasping. Their paper flowers were flattened. Their skirts were hanging in shreds, and green dye from the crepe paper was dripping down their legs onto their socks. When the water finally stopped, Molly's hair was stuck to her forehead. Her hands were full of melting paper flowers, and most of the hula skirt lay in soggy ribbons in the driveway. "Ruined! Wrecked! Completely wrecked!" sobbed Molly. "Who would play such a mean trick?" Then the girls heard Ricky singing in a low, slow, steady voice. "I see London, I see France, I can see your underpants." "Ricky!" yelled Molly. "I'll get you for this! You ruined everything! You'll be sorry! You wait! You'll be really sorry!" Ricky threw the hose down and ran off. The girls just stood there in the driveway, stunned with surprise and sputtering with anger. Maybe they shouldn't have teased Ricky about Dolores, but who would have ever expected him to get back at them in such a terrible, mean way? Finally, Linda said, "I'm freezing." Molly said, "You two go inside. I'll clean up this mess. Then we've got some planning to do. We have to teach Ricky a lesson he'll never forget." Chapter 4. War. A while later, Linda, Susan, and Molly sat in Molly's room in their pajamas, still pink and warm from their baths, wrapped head to toe in big white blankets. They looked like 3 rosy polar bears. The girls were whispering together on Molly's bed when they heard Mrs. McIntyre returning with Brad. "Would you hula dancers like some cocoa?" Mrs. McIntyre called up to the girls. "Okay, Mom," called Molly. "We'll be right down." "Good," said Susan. "Now we can tell her what Ricky did." "No," Molly said quickly. "Why not?" said Susan. "I don't want to be a tattletale," said Molly. "Besides, she'd be way too easy on him. We have to take care of Ricky ourselves." The girls walked slowly into the kitchen. There at the table sat Ricky, still in his pirate costume. He was sipping cocoa and looking as innocent as a kitten. Molly, Linda, and Susan sat as far away from Ricky as possible. "Well, girls," said Mrs. McIntyre, "how was your Hawaiian Halloween?" "Fine," said the 3 girls all together, but it sounded as if they meant just the opposite. Mrs. McIntyre looked puzzled. "Just fine, that's all?" she asked. "And why are you all in your pajamas already? I wanted to take your picture to send to Dad. What happened to your costumes? And your bag of treats?" "They got wet," said Molly. "Wet?" asked Mrs. McIntyre. "How?" The girls looked at each other. "By a hose," said Susan. "Ricky, we walked into a hose by mistake," said Molly quickly before Susan could finish. "Who would be using a hose on a windy Halloween night?" asked Mrs. McIntyre. The girls said nothing. Finally, Molly said, "Just someone." Mrs. McIntyre frowned. "Molly McIntyre," she said, "I have the distinct feeling that I am not being told the whole story." Molly stared into her cocoa cup. Ricky pushed his chair back from the table. "Perhaps you can tell me what happened, Ricky," said Mrs. McIntyre. "Me!" squeaked Ricky. He fiddled with the handle of his pirate dagger. I mean... "Go on, Ricky," said Mrs. McIntyre. "Well, it was just a joke, Mom," said Ricky. "Just a joke on the girls. You know, a Halloween joke, trick or treat." "A mean trick," muttered Linda. "What did you do?" asked Mrs. McIntyre, staring steadily at Ricky. "I just got a little water on their costumes," said Ricky. "A little water?" squealed Molly. "You dumped pails and pails of water all over us, Ricky. You squirted us with a hose," Susan added indignantly. "You ruined our costumes and all our treats," said Linda. "Is that true?" asked Mrs. McIntyre. "Yes!" exclaimed all the girls. "Ricky?" "Yes, ma'am," muttered Ricky. He looked at his feet. Mrs. McIntyre was quiet. Then she said, "Ricky, that was a very mean thing to do. I'm ashamed of you, treating your sister and her friends that way. I think I can say that your father would be ashamed of you two. I'm going to punish you just as I think he would have punished you." Mrs. McIntyre sighed. "You are to apologize to these girls. Then you are to give your bag of Halloween treats to Linda, Susan, and Molly to share. You may keep one treat and only one for yourself. I'm going upstairs to put Brad to bed now. And while I'm gone, I want you to apologize. Is that clear?" "Yes, ma'am," said Ricky. "Girls, after Ricky apologizes, I want you to go to bed. I'll come in later to say goodnight," said Mrs. McIntyre as she left with Brad. After she had gone, Ricky muttered, "Sorry." Then he shoved his bag of Halloween treats into Molly's hand and ran out of the kitchen. As the girls trudged up to bed, Linda whispered, "You were right, Molly. She was too easy on him." "Yeah," said Susan, "except for that part about your father being ashamed. He wrecked our Halloween, and he's barely suffering at all." Said Linda. "Well," said Molly as she flopped on her bed, "we'll just have to think up a plan to make Ricky really suffer. Let's let the air out of his bicycle tires," suggested Susan. "Not bad enough," said Molly. "We could put frogs under his pillow," said Linda. "Dozens and dozens of frogs." "Yeah, but then we'd have to catch the frogs," Susan pointed out. "Ew!" they all shrieked. "We could disguise our voices and call him up on the telephone," said Susan. "We could pretend to be Mrs. Mobley, his teacher, and say he has to stay after school every day next week for being bad." "No," said Molly. "That's no good. It doesn't embarrass him in front of anyone. We have to really embarrass him in front of lots of people, or in front of someone he'd hate to be embarrassed in front of, like Mom or Dolores," said Linda. "Yes, that's it," said Molly. "Embarrass him in front of Dolores." "But how?" asked Susan. The girls were quiet for a minute. Molly was still mad as a wet hen, her father would say. She could remember Ricky chanting, "I see London, I see France, I can see your underpants." Underpants. Dolores, Molly thought. Then she smiled to herself. "I think I have a plan," she said to Linda and Susan. "But all three of us have to cooperate or it won't work." The next morning was Saturday. The breakfast table was crowded. Dolores, who had spent the night with Jill, was talking about the movie they were all going to see that afternoon. Ricky came to the table last. His hair was slicked back with water. "That's probably so Dolores will notice him," thought Molly. But she didn't say anything. She wouldn't say anything to Ricky. She was still too mad about what he had done the night before. Susan was the first to start the plan to get back at Ricky. She asked Mrs. McIntyre for 3 big brown bags. "To hold our Halloween treats," she said, with a look at Ricky. Mrs. McIntyre gave her the bags. Linda had a harder job to do. She had to keep Ricky out of his room for a while after breakfast. "Can I watch you shoot baskets?" she asked Ricky. "I want to learn how." "Girls can't play basketball," answered Ricky rudely. "Ricky!" said Mrs. McIntyre. "What an unfriendly thing to say! You march outside and like a gentleman and show Linda how to shoot baskets. She is our guest." "Yes, ma'am," said Ricky. He and Linda went outside. Mrs. McIntyre walked with Brad to the mailbox around the corner to mail a letter to Dad. Dolores followed Jill up to her room to listen to records. As soon as Jill's door closed, Molly and Susan dashed into Ricky's room. They flung open the top drawer of his dresser and dumped his underwear into the brown bag. They turned his laundry bag upside down on the floor, gathered the underwear and dirty socks from a pile, and stuffed them into the other two bags. They made one last quick check to make sure the room did not look disturbed before they rushed back to the room. The window in Molly's room looked out over the back door and driveway, where Ricky was shooting baskets and Linda was watching. Molly opened the window wide. "Okay, go on," she whispered to Susan. "I can't do it," hissed Susan. "I'm too scared, and it's lying." "Go on, Susan," said Molly. "You have to do it. Linda and I will never speak to you again if you don't. Just cross your fingers, then it's not a lie." "Okay," said Susan. She went and knocked softly on Jill's door. Jill and Dolores were inside practicing the rumba. "What do you want?" Jill asked Susan. "Well," said Susan, "I thought you'd like to know that Russ Campbell is at the corner in his car. He told me to run in here and tell you to, ask you if you wanted to go for a ride with him." "Russ Campbell!" Jill and Dolores shrieked. Russ Campbell was the senior football star at Montgomery High School, where Jill and Dolores were freshmen. A ride in Russ Campbell's car was a dream come true for them. "Oh, how do I look?" asked Jill in a panic. "You look fine." "Gosh, I'm glad we curled our hair last night." "Let's go," said Jill. "Let's go before Russ changes his mind." "Okay," said Dolores. The girls galloped down the stairs, but just before they went out the back door, they slowed down, patted their hair, smoothed their skirts, and straightened their shoulders. Susan ran back to Molly's room. "Get ready! They're on their way outside." Seconds later, just as Dolores and Jill strolled out the back door, Molly and Susan leaned way out the window, yelled as loud as they could, and turned the big brown bags upside down. Underwear and t-shirts filled the air like giant floppy snowflakes. Dozens of socks tumbled down. A t-shirt caught in the basketball hoop. A dirty sock landed on Jill's shoulder. Some plaid undershorts landed right on Dolores's head. "What's this?" asked Dolores in disgust as she lifted the underwear off her head with the very tips of her fingers. Molly, Susan, and Linda chanted, "I see London, I see France. Those are Ricky's underpants." "Ricky!" screeched Jill. "That's revolting!" She threw the dirty sock at him. "And I suppose that business about Russ Campbell was part of the joke too? Of all the stupid, childish things!" "But I didn't!" Ricky wailed. "Here, Ricky," Dolores interrupted. She was still dangling the undershorts from her fingertips. "I believe these cute little underpants belong to you, don't they?" She tossed them to Ricky. When she tossed them to Ricky, she winked at Jill. Suddenly they both started to laugh. They laughed so hard they had to sit down on the back steps to laugh some more. Ricky got very red in the face. He ran around frantically collecting his socks and underwear. Finally, Dolores gasped, "Come on, Jill. Let's go to my house, At least we can be pretty sure we won't be showered with some little kid's underwear. Jill and Dolores started down the driveway, still laughing at Ricky. Molly called out the window, "There's your Halloween trick-or-treat, Ricky!" "I'll get you!" Ricky yelled back. "You'll be sorry! This is war! This is really war! Oh!" Suddenly Ricky stopped. He stood still in the driveway. Jill and Dolores stopped too. Molly and Susan leaned out the window to see why. There was Mrs. McIntyre standing at the end of the driveway with Brad. Her face was as hard and cold and white as a marble statue. "Uh-oh," said Susan. She slid down to the floor next to Molly. Mrs. McIntyre looked up at the window. "Come down here at once, girls," she said sternly. "Jill and Dolores, I want you to hear this too." In seconds, everyone stood on the back steps. Molly's legs were shaking. No one said anything. Then Mrs. McIntyre began to speak. "Until there are no more tricks in this house, there will be no more treats," said Mrs. McIntyre. "Instead of going to the movies, Ricky, you will spend your day raking the yard. Make sure you rake up the Halloween mess you made, all the bits of costume, all the ruined food. Susan, Linda, and Molly, you will spend your day doing Ricky's laundry. I want everything washed, hung out to dry, folded, and put away by the end of the afternoon. Linda and Dolores, you will take care of Brad." Mrs. McIntyre paused. She looked straight at Molly, then straight at Ricky. "I suppose these tricks you have been playing on each other don't seem very serious to you, but they're mean, childish, and wasteful. I'm disappointed in you. But more than that, I'm sad and discouraged. If we can't get along together, who can?" Molly looked at Ricky. Ricky looked at his mother. "This fighting has to stop." Mrs. McIntyre went on. "This is exactly what starts wars. This meanness, anger, and revenge. Two sides decide to get even and end up hurting each other. There's war and fighting enough in the world. And I won't have any more of it in this house. Is that understood?" Everyone mumbled. "Yes, ma'am." "All right, then," said Mrs. McIntyre. "Get to work." She went inside. Molly stood up and faced Ricky. "Give me your things," she said. "Here," said Ricky. "I think that's all of them." He pushed the bundle into her arms. "Okay," said Molly. "Listen, we didn't mean... we didn't want to keep fighting with you, exactly. We were just mad. We wanted to embarrass you. We shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. I really am." "It's okay," said Ricky. "I guess I deserved it." He began to smile a little. "Your chick was mean, but, it was funny, too." He laughed. "I'm kind of glad not to be fighting against you anymore. You three have pretty good ideas, even if you are a bunch of triple dips. I guess it's better to be on your side than your enemy." Molly grinned. "Thanks, Ricky," she said. She and Linda and Susan went inside. It wasn't so bad doing Ricky's laundry. Molly, Linda, and Susan pretended they were three Cinderellas before the ball. So in a way, Molly got to be Cinderella for Halloween after all. And later, when the girls went outside to hang the laundry on the clothesline, Mrs. McIntyre came out to help them. "It sort of looks like an underwear tree, doesn't it?" she said. When they were finished, she smiled down at Molly, who gave her a hug. Her mother was right. It was much better not to be fighting. And that concludes